Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Ancient Mindcast. I hope you are having a calm and peaceful day. Today, I want to share with you a very powerful story from history, a story of ambition, courage, and the rise of one of the most famous leaders the world has ever known. Have you ever wondered how an ordinary person can rise to great power? How someone without a crown can become stronger than kings? And what happens when that power grows so large that even friends begin to feel afraid? Today, we will explore the life of Julius Caesar, a man who changed the history of Rome forever. Through this story, you will also improve your English by listening to simple, clear, and meaningful narration. If you enjoy learning English through stories like this, please subscribe to Ancient Mindcast. Your support helps us continue creating calm and educational content for learners around the world. Now, let us begin. Julius Caesar was born in the year 100 BC in the great city of Rome. At that time, Rome was already a powerful state, but it was not yet an empire. It was known as a republic, which means it did not have a king. Instead, the country was governed by elected leaders and a group of powerful men called the Senate. The Senate controlled most of the political power in Rome. These men came from wealthy and noble families, and they made important decisions about the future of the state. Although Rome called itself a republic, true power was often held by a small group of elite people. Caesar was born into one of these noble families. His family name was respected, but they were not the most powerful or richest. From an early age, Caesar understood that if he wanted to achieve greatness, he could not depend only on his family background. He would have to build his own path. As a young man, Caesar was intelligent, confident, and full of ambition. He believed that he was meant for something greater than an ordinary life. However, his early years were not easy. Rome was a place filled with political tension and danger. Powerful leaders often fought for control, and the wrong decision could lead to serious consequences. During this time, a dictator named Sulla took control of Rome. He saw Caesar as a possible threat and ordered him to divorce his wife. Caesar refused. This decision was extremely dangerous. In that time, disobeying a dictator could mean losing your life. Because of this, Caesar was forced to leave Rome and live in hiding. For a period of time, he moved from place to place, always aware that he could be captured. These difficult experiences shaped Caesar's character. They taught him how fragile power could be and how important it was to be strong, careful, and strategic. After the death of Sulla, Caesar was finally able to return to Rome. This marked the beginning of his true journey. He began working as a lawyer and quickly gained attention for his speaking ability. Caesar was not just intelligent, he was also an excellent communicator. When he spoke, people listened. His words were clear, persuasive, and powerful. In Rome, public speaking was one of the most important skills a person could have. Through his speeches, Caesar began to build a strong reputation and gain the support of the people. But Caesar understood something very important about power. Words alone were not enough. To rise in Rome, he needed allies. So he began forming relationships with influential individuals. He carefully built connections, supported others when it benefited him, and slowly moved higher in the political system. At the same time, Caesar dreamed of something greater than politics. He wanted glory. He wanted to achieve something so significant that his name would be remembered for generations. In ancient Rome, there was one clear way to achieve that kind of greatness: military success. So Caesar turned his attention to the army. He became a general and was given command of Roman forces in a region called Gaul. This area, which is part of modern-day France and surrounding regions, was not fully under Roman control. It was a land of many tribes, each with its own leaders and conflicts. For Caesar, this was not just a challenge, it was an opportunity. He saw the chance to prove himself, to gain fame, and to build real power. And so, he began a military campaign that would change his life forever. As Caesar entered Gaul, he faced a world of uncertainty. The land was vast, the people were strong, and resistance was everywhere. But Caesar was determined. He did not see fear, he saw possibility. And this was only the beginning of his rise. When Julius Caesar arrived in Gaul, he entered a land that was very different from Rome. It was not a single united country, but a region filled with many tribes, each with its own leaders, traditions, and conflicts. Some tribes were friendly to Rome, but many resisted Roman control. For Caesar, this situation was both dangerous and full of opportunity. He understood that if he could bring Gaul under Roman control, he would gain not only land, but also power, wealth, and most importantly, fame. And in Rome, fame could be just as powerful as an army. So, Caesar began a long and difficult military campaign. The wars in Gaul lasted for nearly 8 years. They were not simple battles that ended quickly. Instead, they were a series of campaigns, each one requiring careful planning, strong leadership, and great courage. Caesar faced many different enemies. Some were small tribes that fought in forests and mountains. Others were large groups that joined together to resist Roman expansion. One of his most famous enemies was a leader named Vercingetorix, who united many tribes against him. This made the war even more challenging. But Caesar was not only brave, he was also a brilliant strategist. He knew how to move his army quickly. He knew how to surprise his enemies, and most importantly, he understood how to keep his soldiers loyal. He did not stay far away from danger. Instead, he often placed himself close to the front lines. He shared the same hardships as his soldiers. He marched long distances with them, faced cold weather with them, and risked his life alongside them. Because of this, his army trusted him deeply. They did not see him as just a commander. They saw him as a leader who understood them. One of the most important moments in the Gallic Wars was the siege of Alesia. In this battle, Caesar faced Vercingetorix and a large united force of Gauls. The situation was extremely difficult. Caesar's army surrounded the enemy city, but at the same time, another Gallic army came to attack from outside. This meant that Caesar and his soldiers were trapped between two forces. To solve this problem, Caesar made a bold and intelligent decision. He ordered his army to build 2 walls. One wall faced inward to keep the enemy inside the city. The other wall faced outward to defend against the attacking army outside. This strategy was risky, but it worked. After a long and exhausting battle, Caesar's forces defeated both armies. Vercingetorix surrendered, and Gaul finally came under Roman control. This victory changed everything.
Caesar returned from Gaul not only as a successful general, but as a hero. His name became famous across Rome. People admired him, soldiers respected him, and many believed he was the greatest leader of his time. But while Caesar's power was growing, something else was also growing in Rome: fear. Back in Rome, the Senate was watching carefully. At first, they had supported Caesar, but now they began to feel uncomfortable. They saw how popular he had become. They saw how loyal his army was, and they began to worry that he might become too powerful. Because in a republic, no single person should have complete control. At this time, Caesar was still connected to Pompey, one of the most powerful men in Rome. Along with a third man named Crassus, they had formed an alliance known as the First Triumvirate. This allowed them to share power and influence, but alliances built on ambition rarely last forever. Crassus died during a military campaign in the East. Without him, the balance between Caesar and Pompey began to weaken. Pompey remained in Rome and slowly gained more support from the Senate. Many senators began to see him as a protector of the Republic. At the same time, they began to see Caesar as a threat. The relationship between Caesar and Pompey changed. They were no longer allies. They were becoming rivals. Eventually, the Senate made a decision that would lead to one of the most important moments in history. They ordered Caesar to return to Rome, but there was one condition: he must leave his army behind. This was not a simple request. It was a political move designed to weaken him. Because Caesar understood what would happen if he returned without his army, he would lose his power, his protection, and possibly his life. So once again, Caesar faced a difficult choice. Should he obey the Senate and trust the system? Or should he protect himself and take control of his future? In the year 49 BC, Caesar stood before a small river known as the Rubicon. This river marked the boundary between his military command and the territory of Rome. According to Roman law, no general was allowed to cross this river with an army. Doing so would be considered an act of rebellion. Caesar paused. He knew that this decision would change everything. If he crossed the river, there would be no turning back. There would be no peace, only war. And then he made his choice. He crossed the Rubicon. With that single action, Caesar began a civil war. Rome was no longer united. It was now divided between two powerful leaders. On one side stood Caesar, with his loyal army and growing support from the people. On the other side stood Pompey, supported by the Senate and many traditional leaders of Rome. The future of Rome would now be decided not by words, but by war. After Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, there was no longer any possibility of peace. Rome was now divided into two sides. On one side stood Caesar, a general with a loyal army and the support of many ordinary people. On the other side stood Pompey, backed by the Senate and the traditional leaders of Rome. What had once been a political conflict had now become a full civil war.
Caesar moved quickly. Speed was one of his greatest strengths. Instead of waiting, he advanced into Italy with confidence. Many cities opened their gates to him without a fight.
People were uncertain, but they also saw Caesar as a strong and capable leader. Pompey, however, chose a different strategy. He did not immediately fight Caesar in Italy. Instead, he withdrew his forces and moved east toward Greece, where he could gather a larger army and prepare for a major battle. For a time, it seemed that Pompey had the advantage. He had more resources, more support from the Senate, and access to important territories. Many believed that he would defeat Caesar once the two armies finally met. But Caesar was not discouraged. He continued to move forward, carefully planning each step, keeping his army united and motivated. Eventually, the two sides faced each other in one of the most important battles in Roman history, the Battle of Pharsalus. This battle would decide the future of Rome.
Pompey's army was larger. He had more soldiers, more cavalry, and strong support from experienced commanders. From the outside, it looked like he had the better chance of winning.
But Caesar had something different. He had discipline, experience, and the complete trust of his men. Before the battle began, Caesar spoke to his soldiers. He reminded them of everything they had achieved together, the long years in Gaul, the difficult battles, the victories they had earned side by side. His words strengthened their confidence. They were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for their leader. When the battle started, Caesar used a clever and unexpected strategy. Pompey's army relied heavily on its cavalry, hoping to surround Caesar's forces. But Caesar anticipated this move. He placed a special group of soldiers in a hidden position, ready to defend against the attack. When Pompey's cavalry advanced, Caesar's soldiers were prepared. They pushed back the attack and broke Pompey's advantage. This moment changed everything.
Pompey's army began to lose its structure. Confusion spread, and Caesar took control of the battlefield. In the end, Caesar won the battle. Pompey was defeated.
After his defeat, Pompey fled. He left the battlefield and traveled to Egypt, hoping to find safety and support there. But his journey ended in betrayal. When Pompey arrived in Egypt, the local rulers made a decision. They believed that killing Pompey would please Caesar and secure their own position. So they betrayed him. Pompey was killed before he could even meet Caesar. When Caesar later arrived in Egypt, he was presented with Pompey's head as a gift. But instead of celebrating, Caesar reacted with sadness. Pompey had once been his ally, his partner, and a powerful leader of Rome. Even though they had become enemies, Caesar did not want to see him die this way. This moment reveals something important about Caesar. He was not simply a man of ambition and power. He was also capable of respect and emotion. While in Egypt, Caesar became involved in another political situation. Egypt itself was facing a struggle for power. A young queen named Cleopatra was fighting to keep her position. Cleopatra was intelligent, confident, and highly strategic. She understood that forming an alliance with Caesar could secure her future. When they met, they formed a strong connection. Together, they worked to restore her power in Egypt. This relationship was not only political, it also became personal. Cleopatra and Caesar grew close, and their partnership strengthened both of their positions. After stabilizing the situation in Egypt, Caesar returned to Rome. But now, everything had changed. He was no longer just a general. He was no longer just a political figure. He had become the most powerful man in the Roman world. The civil war was over. His enemies had been defeated, and many people in Rome welcomed him as a hero. Caesar began to introduce reforms. He worked to improve the lives of the poor. He reduced debt He reorganized the government. He also made changes to the calendar, creating a system that is still used in a modified form today. But as his power grew, so did the concern of the Senate. They began to notice that Caesar was gaining more control than any leader before him. He was given more titles, more authority, more influence. Finally, he was declared dictator for life. This was something Rome had never seen before. In a republic, power was supposed to be temporary. No one was meant to rule forever. So even though Caesar had many supporters, there were also those who feared him. They believed that he was moving too close to becoming a king, and in Rome, the idea of a king was deeply feared. Because of this fear, a group of senators began to form a plan. They believed that they were acting in the best interest of Rome. They believed they were protecting the republic. But the decision they were about to make would change history forever. As Julius Caesar's power reached its highest point, a quiet but dangerous tension spread through Rome. To the people, he was a hero, a leader who had brought victory, stability, and reform. But to many members of the Senate, he was something else, a threat. The Roman Republic had been built on one important idea. No single man should hold absolute power. Power should be shared, balanced, controlled. But now, Caesar was different. He held more authority than any leader before him. He made decisions without needing approval. He controlled the army. He had the support of the people. And now, he had been given the title dictator for life. For some, this was too much. They began to fear that Caesar no longer wanted to protect the republic, but to replace it. Whispers began to spread. Quiet conversations, secret meetings. A group of senators started to believe that they had only one choice. They must stop Caesar. Among this group was a man named Marcus Brutus. Brutus was respected, honorable, and most importantly, he was close to Caesar. Caesar trusted him. Some even believed that Caesar saw Brutus as a son. This made the situation deeply tragic because the plan that was forming was not just political, it was personal. The conspirators chose a date. March 15th, a day that would later be remembered as the Ides of March. On the morning of that day, Caesar prepared to go to the Senate. There were warnings. Some people told him not to go. There were signs, small moments that suggested danger. But Caesar ignored them. Perhaps he believed that no one would dare attack him. Perhaps he trusted the people around him. Or perhaps he simply did not believe that his life was in danger. When Caesar entered the Senate chamber, everything appeared normal. The senators greeted him. The room was calm. There was no sign of what was about to happen. Then, suddenly, everything changed. One senator stepped forward, then another, and in a moment, the attack began. Knives were drawn, voices rose, the calm of the room turned into chaos. Caesar was surrounded. There was no escape. At first, he tried to resist. He tried to defend himself. But the attack was too sudden, too many men, too close. And then, in the middle of the violence, he saw a familiar face. Brutus, the man he trusted, the man he believed in. In that moment, something inside Caesar changed. It is said that he spoke the words, "Et tu, Brute?" You too, Brutus? These were not just words of surprise, they were words of deep betrayal. After that moment, Caesar stopped fighting. He no longer resisted, and soon Julius Caesar fell. He died on the floor of the Senate, the most powerful man in Rome, killed by the very people who claimed to protect it. The conspirators believed they had saved the Republic. They believed that by removing Caesar, they had restored balance. But history would prove them wrong. Instead of peace, Rome fell into even greater chaos. The death of Caesar created a power vacuum, and soon new leaders began to rise. Among them was Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, a young man who would later become known as Augustus. There were more wars, more struggles, more battles for control. And in the end, the Roman Republic did not survive. It became an empire. And the first emperor was the heir of Julius Caesar. So in a way, even in death, Caesar changed Rome forever. Today, more than 2,000 years later, we still remember his name. We remember his ambition, his courage, his victories. But we also remember something deeper, that power can bring greatness, but also fear, that trust can be broken even by those closest to us, and that the choices we make can shape history in ways we never expect. Now, my friends, take a moment to think. Was Julius Caesar a hero who helped Rome become stronger? Or was he a man who wanted too much power and changed the Republic forever? There is no simple answer, and that is what makes history so powerful. Thank you for listening. I hope this story helped you improve your English and also understand a little more about our past. If you enjoyed this journey, please like this video and subscribe to Ancient Mindcast. And now I would love to hear from you. Do you think Caesar made the right choice when he crossed the Rubicon, or was that the moment everything began to fall apart? Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep discovering the stories of our world.